Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 State of Education ceremony. We are gathered here in this beautiful building in this great state to celebrate learning, honor teaching, and show our support for public education. I am Dimitri Beekman, Executive Director for Equity and Inclusion at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, and I will be leading you through this ceremony today. It is with great respect for our indigenous nation that I offer this land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this capital rests upon the ancestral lands of the Ho-Chunk Nation, that this land was taken from them through force centuries ago. The oppression perpetuated against our indigenous neighbors by federal and state institutions not only had an impact in years past, but continues to have an impact today. The Department of Public Instruction respects the inherent sovereignty of our tribal nations, and we will lift up the incredible contributions of such indigenous leaders as Ada Deer, Dr. Verna Fowler, and Dr. Rosemary Ackley Christensen, who have recently passed on for the indelible mark they have left on public education and policy in Wisconsin and the entire country. We do indeed stand upon the shoulders of giants in education leadership. Let me extend our gratitude to our tribal leaders, state leaders, including our legislators, Governor Tony Evers, education organization leaders, district and school leaders, library leaders, and community members and leaders. Thank you all for being here with us today for the State of Education ceremony. I also see quite a few colleagues in the rotunda. Thank you for all that you do today and every day. I also want to recognize that so many of our education leaders in Wisconsin are not here at the Capitol today. And that is because they are in classrooms across our state doing the work of teaching and learning. Maybe some of them are joining us on the live stream. Hello, teachers. Hello, students. And a shout out to civic engagement in the classroom. We do have a few students and teachers joining us today, and I'd like to introduce one of them now. Owen Blinker is a student at Neenah High School. He was his district's representative at Badger State, where he served as state superintendent of that event. Please join me in welcoming Owen Blinker.
Hello. Please stand if you would like to join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the vocal jazz ensemble from the Milwaukee School of the Arts will sing the national anthem.
Go ahead.
So since we already started with the national anthem, we are going to move on. I know we love our country, but we're going to move on today. So thank you for that beautiful rendition earlier. Last year, we introduced a poet to the State of Education ceremony. And this year, we're doing that one better with multiple poets. We are honored to have Wyatt Woodruff from the Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and Carabella Ouimet and Evan Malone from the Wisconsin School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing as our second annual poets. And I invite you in joining me to welcome Wyatt to the microphone.
Hope. Hope is something that must be savored and not lost. Hope can come with some cost. Each day we feel hope slipping away from our grip. With that little to cling to, it's easier to slip. What happens when we lose our hope? Does life just keep going? These questions pester the mind and haunt the brain with you never knowing. Every day, the hope and optimism we hold becomes harder to hold. Eventually, we all just become uninterested or cold. The existence of hopelessness becomes more powerful in your mind, taking precedence. These negative thoughts making your body and mind their new residence. After time, if you're lucky, hope can return and bring grace. Friends and family will comment on how you've had a constant sad or mean look on your face. These thoughts of hope are what keep us going throughout the world, no matter what comes our way. And these thoughts always come to my mind whenever I need to lighten someone's day. Thank you.
Thank you, Wyatt. And now please welcome Carabella and Evan to perform their poem, accompanied by Jordan.
Roots in the ground tie us together. Friends, family, teachers, and more. Ground us and bind us as we grow each spring. Our branches get stronger with the hope for what is to come. Storms come and go. Rain floods the ground. The wind howls in our faces, but we're still here. We persist. Then every storm runs out of rain. Sunshine and fresh air arrive. We breathe new life into our branches, growing and learning. We grow and grow. Our branches slowly fall apart. Our leaves turn a bright hue and fall, paving the way for a new generation. A positive influence upon the new. Inspiration and support is to come. Our roots and branches slumber as a bear that hibernates, safe and sound as the cold, hard winter comes and goes, until it is time to emerge into the world. Encourage them not to be afraid. Hunger for knowledge as the bear hungers in the spring. Hunger for experience as buds on branches hunger for sunshine. Persist against those obstacles together, supported by those who celebrate us. We pass on our roots of knowledge, persistence, and bravery to future generations. Like acorns falling from our branches are strong roots that bind us and hold us together, sprouting future generations. Stronger, better, supported, loved.
And if we can give Wyatt, Evan, and Carabella another round of applause for their great poems and sharing today. Thank you for those words, because we needed that. And now, who better to follow inspiring students than an inspiring teacher? Every year, we recognize 5 Wisconsin Teachers of the Year, and I'll get to introduce you to all 5 of these amazing educators a little later in the ceremony. And trust me, that is the best part of this job. But first, we're going to hear from one of them about the hope she sees in her students. Claudia Heller DeMesser is a multilingual specialist from Milwaukee Public Schools. And I would love if you could give her a round of encouraging applause as she comes to the podium.
Good afternoon. I am honored to be here as a representative of Wisconsin's teachers and as someone who is blessed to work with the multilingual learners of this great state. As educators, it is our responsibility to offer a safe and dependable environment for students. This is the importance of building a strong classroom community. Such community is important for all students, and especially for the students I work with, multilingual students, many of whom are new to this country and speak little to no English. They need stability, they need to be welcomed, and they need support. After years of movement, they are able to find grounding in one place, in our schools. Some of the richness my multilingual students bring to their classroom communities comes in the form of their diversity and the spectrum of perspectives they represent. And some of that richness is thanks to the educational equity that meets their needs. What is best for my English learners, what is best for our special education students, it is good for all students. And meeting the needs of every student in whatever way is best for them, that creates more opportunities for everyone. It creates opportunities for deep learning, opportunities to connect with each other and form strong friendships, and opportunities to be the children they are and find joy in this new place, this new school, this new state to call home. The diversity they bring to our inclusive classrooms and the educational equity we provide to meet their needs, all of this makes for bold, brave conversations, not only possible, but essential. I find that inspiring, that our children can be so brave, and that my students who are just now learning English can be so bold in their new language. I remember one student who, after many months, turned to me, having just recently begun speaking in English, and said, "I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't have the words." And then she proceeded to tell me about her journey to this country from Southeast Asia, how she had to cross a river while people were shooting at her and her family, and how she didn't know how to swim. I stood there, receiving the gift of this student's trust and bravery and boldness, and I realized that this is the power of educational equity. She got the instruction she needed to be able to learn enough language to boldly share this story with me. And then she kept learning, kept striving, kept asking what's next, and then trying her best because her can-do attitude pushed her forward. What a gift to witness. Today, she is blossoming into a confident young woman who will earn her driver's license by the end of the year. Every conversation my students have is daunting, and yet they persevere. They have so much hope and show so much resilience. That is how they are able to learn and grow through the challenges and traumas they have experienced. Refugee camps, multiple continents, airplanes, boats, and more. So many of them have been transient for so many years. In many cases, movement and instability have been the only constant in their childhood. It's all they've ever known. But now, they have the stability of our diverse, inclusive classroom communities. They have space to learn, to grow, to celebrate, to learn enough English to say, "Ms. Heller, I can't do it," only to have me point out, "Oh, yes, you can. Just think, 6 months ago, you couldn't even say that sentence." That's why we both know you can. And let me tell you, that smile could have powered a state. In fact, I think that's my message today. Their smiles, their courage, their joy, their contributions to our schools, and the fact that what we do as teachers to meet their needs is also what's best for every kid. What it boils down to is this. These students transform our classrooms into richer places, and so do their families who now call Wisconsin home. See, we are the lucky ones. Multilingual students and their families enrich our schools and our state with their lessons, both the lessons they are learning and the lessons and can-do attitude and joy that they teach us every day. These are the lessons that create a future for our state. Because there is no doubt in my mind that their success will power our future. I believe in them wholeheartedly. Thank you for believing in all students, for believing in education, and for believing in the boundless possibilities that lie ahead for Wisconsin's children. Thank you. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce a student who is already a leader. Genevieve Winkler is a student at Green Bay Southwest High School. She was her district's representative at Badger State, where she served as state superintendent of that event. Please join me in welcoming Genevieve to introduce State Superintendent Dr. Jill Underly.
Thank you, Claudia, for that speech and all you do for your students. I am honored to introduce State Superintendent Dr. Jill Underly. Dr. Underly was elected State Superintendent of Public Instruction in April 2021 and has a deep background in public education. For more than 2 decades, Dr. Underly has worked in all facets of public education as a teacher, principal, and a rural superintendent in the Pecatonia School District. She holds bachelor's degrees in history and sociology, master's degrees in secondary education and administration, and a doctorate in educational leadership and policy analysis. She and her husband, John, have 2 children, both in high school. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Underly for her State of Education address.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you, Genevieve, for that introduction. And I can think of no one more fitting to speak alongside me today than the students and teachers from schools across Wisconsin, from Neenah to Janesville, Green Bay to Delavan to Milwaukee. I am so excited for you to become the leaders of tomorrow. In fact, the education that is preparing you for our collective tomorrow is what I'm here to talk about today. So thank you, students, for your words. Thank you to all of you, those of you here in the rotunda and those of you watching online. I'm so glad that you're here to listen to what we have to say about the state of education in Wisconsin. I'm Jill Underly, Wisconsin State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I'm going to begin my speech today with a story, a beloved story, a story by Eric Carle that I know so many of us have read or still read to our kids in our early learning classrooms. The Very Hungry Caterpillar is such a well-loved picture book, and you might think it a rather odd place to start a major address on education, but I beg to differ. The caterpillar is hungry, very hungry in fact, and also curious and intent on growing. And in addition to being a sweet story about stomach aches, it's one about metamorphosis and change, and it conveniently skips the messiest part of that change. In the book, the caterpillar builds a cocoon, waits 2 weeks, and then emerges as a butterfly. But the messy part, those 2 weeks, is the best, most important part of the story because the messy part is what carries the important lesson. So let me tell you about that lesson. It's kind of perfect that the first time that I heard the story, or heard the messy part, I should say, was from a student who heard about it from their classroom teacher, who taught about it as a community building exercise. So here's what the student, Blue, wrote. When a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, there's a moment in the transition when the caterpillar must let go of its form in order to reform into a butterfly. Inside that chrysalis, the body dissolves into a kind of soup. It's not the loveliest part of the process, but without it, there cannot be change. When you feel like everything is falling apart, remember the caterpillar and be willing to be the soup. I think it's a hopeful lesson, the story of mess and transformation. Because after all, change or transformation, it can be messy. And the process is rarely pretty, but it's where the hope lives. It can be easy to feel hopeless in times of change and transition. That's why it's easy to feel hopeless right now. It's true that there's a lot to be discouraged about, a lot shifting underneath our feet. We are in a moment of change. There is, I know, a lot of mess. We're through a global pandemic. We're seeing mental health challenges that have been mounting for too long turn into a burgeoning crisis. There is so much division and hate because it's easy to stoke fear in times of shifting and uncertainty and change. When we're fearful, it's easy to fall into a fighting stance. We feel like we need to be warriors suiting up for battle. But warriors, no matter how joyful, are still dealing in violence. And wars, even those ostensibly about culture, have casualties. Battles cause collateral damage, and we can't risk to hurt or the hurt any fight stands to cause our kids just because we're scared of change. There's too much at stake, and we could lose too much. Destruction is the polar opposite of hope. It's true, choosing another path can be hard. Tearing something down is always easier than building it. And yet sometimes what is hard can also be what is hopeful. As the poet Amanda Gorham writes, the question isn't if we will weather this unknown, but how we will weather this unknown together. And coming together in times of change is an act of hope. Besides, teaching is not and has never been about doing what's easy. Frankly, neither is governing. Teaching, like governing, is about doing what is necessary for the greater good, and again, like governing, to prepare the next generation to create a future for ourselves and for our children and for beyond. It sure sounds like governing to me. That is why I do not believe that we're at a crossroads. This is bigger than that. Rather, I believe we're at a mountaintop with a real opportunity to take flight. We are at a critical moment in history where we can choose hope and soar, or we can choose destruction. We can choose to try and tear each other down, or we can choose to build and grow. When we teach and learn and grow, we do it through acts of hope, humility, and yes, probably a little mess. In teaching our kids what they need to know in the ways that they need to learn it, we create a future for us all. The crux of the matter is this: I believe in hope, and that means I believe in our public schools and in our collective future. Public education is nonpartisan for a reason. There is reasoning behind why our school board elections are in the spring with other races outside of political parties. Public education was placed in our Constitution so that it can provide, by law, for the establishment of district schools which shall be nearly as uniform as practicable, and such schools that shall be free and without charge for tuition to all children. Public education, the Common School Fund, the Normal School Fund, the University of Wisconsin system, the Wisconsin Technical College system, these were all written into our founding documents because past and current leaders of this great state knew that the future of Wisconsin rests in the hands of our children. What a hopeful action to ensure our children have the right to a great education, not only the opportunity for one. Hope powers our public schools. Public schools power our communities. Showing up every day to teach and to learn are acts of hope and exercises in humility. Because teaching is an act of hope and learning is an exercise in humility. Teachers teach lessons to the present in order to make the future possible. This is hopeful, which means the audacious question is, how are they building that future? How are they teaching future-focused hope? Students are learning lessons in the present in order to create a possibility of a future. That is hopeful humility. And so the humble yet necessary question is, again, how are they building that future? What are the valuable lessons that they are learning? Let's ask them, these creators of our collective future, what are the most valuable lessons that you've learned? We did. Posed the question to some middle school students as their school year drew to a close, and they had some pretty impactful answers. Some of you might expect them. Others might come as a surprise. But all of them really need to be lessons we learn as well. While reading their responses, I was struck by much of their insight as their lack of strictly academic answers. It seemed everything they held as a valuable lesson was fascinating. Dare I say messy. It was a mix of traditional school content combined with skills-based and social-emotional learning or community building. These are the lessons they see as future-focused. Students told us they valued lessons in how to be succinct and how to express themselves clearly. From simplifying functions to learning more about the revision and peer editing process, to, as one student said, learning how to express myself through writing was an emotional outlet that kept me from hurting myself. Just sit with that statement for a moment. I'm glad that that lesson was learned. Some of the kids talked about trusting themselves to stick to their own truth and to resist peer pressure, and trusting their peers to value each other's opinions. Part of that trust was also about learning to work together, lessons in collaboration and cooperation and resolving differences. One of my favorite comments was this one: everyone's opinions are valuable, and I learned to accept people for who they really are because people are awesome. In fact, this comment is why I'm so excited about the civic work that we're doing, because being able to understand and value our different worldviews is the bedrock to understanding civics. And that civic learning is how we unlock a strong civil society where challenging discourse is not only allowed for, but also valued very highly. And it's used as a way to learn from each other and grow together. So it sounds like our kids are doing the work. And with our soon-to-be-announced civic scope and sequence and the network of civic fellows across Wisconsin, I know that work will only deepen and grow even more valuable. So speaking of work, developing a strong work ethic was another general theme in the student answers, including an emphasis on self-control and the need to put in effort beyond what you may have initially planned. Part of that recognition was also grounded in lessons concerning self-awareness. It's okay to say no. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to make mistakes. I love that. Think of it this way: a future that we can't imagine yet is guaranteed to be full of challenge and uncertainty. It might even be a little messy. And that mess is why we need to believe in growth, and especially growth from mistakes, as being both possible and good. Believing in growth is hopeful and it is humble. Our students who are closer to that future, because in some ways they are already living it, can be a source for that hope. And the beautiful mess inherent in change is why we need to teach our kids these valuable lessons they will need in a future that they will create. In reality, their future is a place they are currently living and creating by being the diverse learners that they are, and by teaching and learning the inclusive lessons that they find such value in. The truth is, the society we need to prepare them for already exists in some ways, and the fact is just one more reason we need to prepare kids for their future and not our past. Because their current reality is already different from ours. Our children's society is more diverse than ours. Visit any classroom. They are the most diverse communities in our state. It's a function of their age group and our inclusive public education system. And thanks to this diversity in their present, they will grow up to value it in their future. They already do. One student put it this way: as diverse as we are, when we come together and share, we can learn so much and accomplish a lot. Our children's communities, their classrooms, are also some of the most inclusive and equitable places in our state. This is thanks again to their diversity and the fact that public schools are for everyone. And it is also despite the push from some leaders to try and homogenize learning in a way that is just not reflective of historical or current reality, nor of a child's lived experience. It is also thanks to intentional community building and social emotional learning in our classrooms that creates a deep understanding of educational equity among our students. It was a young person who I first heard made this comparison, and I think it's an apt one. She said equity is a lot like firefighting. When the Amazon is burning, we don't insist on dumping water on every forest in the earth just out of some sense of fairness. No, we send firefighters to the rainforest because that's what the rainforest needs. Which also turns out to make the air more breathable for the entire planet, from the mouths of babes. While we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and about how meeting the needs of our most vulnerable learners is actually helpful to all, let me share a couple reminders. First of all, this is a good moment to remember that the curriculum, which reflects the diversity of the human struggle and progress, is in fact reflective of the history of this country, and that affirming the lives of our Black, Indigenous, and students of color matter, and it's not political, it's a statement of fact. Also, it bears remembering that the safety of all kids is a requisite for every kid, and creating safety for LGBTQ+ kids is not controversial. It's the bare minimum, because every kid in this state is our kid, and we need to make sure all kids are accepted and safe. Because all of this, diversity, equity, inclusion in our schools, all of it makes it possible for our kids to thrive academically and personally, to thrive as unique learners and as unique children. All the problems and accusations that we lob at each other, they're adult problems. They're not kid problems. We as adults and as leaders are so busy fighting about issues that our children have moved so far beyond. Honestly, our kids are the ones who are forward-thinking and are future-focused. And so when we ask the questions of what lessons they value, of course their answers show us how well they know that learning is about academics as well as emotional maturity and the ability to work effectively together. Because they know that they are becoming global citizens and that the future will be here and will be theirs faster than we can imagine. Yet right now, some leaders are intent on preparing them based on our past as opposed to their future. But that's not what they need, and they know it. As leaders, we have so much to learn from our children. We need to prepare them for a future that we can't see yet, but that they will create. How can we all create a present that builds towards that future? Again, it seems most appropriate to ask them directly. We have a state superintendent youth council, and considering Wisconsin's need to be future-focused, they struck us as the right people to consult on the question of the future of Wisconsin's public schools. The question posed was, if you could change one thing in your school, what would it be? Let me tell you again that they have some really impactful answers that we could all stand to learn from. So here are a few that stood out to me. Our young people know that the way that we fund our schools in Wisconsin, and they see it as a need for change. They know it's inequitable. They visit other schools. They compete against them in sports. They know which of their friends from church or 4-H have programs or classes in their schools that they themselves don't have. And they wonder why they must go another year without a chemistry teacher, or new football helmets, or air conditioning. Our young people are deeply concerned about the way success is measured in schools, and they issue a pretty resounding indictment of rote learning and the testing that emphasizes it. They eloquently identified concerns I share with an overemphasis on testing because they do not focus on the deep critical thinking skills that are so valuable for our students' future, but rather information that can fit into a multiple choice box. Their comments really gave me pause. We need to teach students not to determine their self-worth based on grades and test scores. I would contend that we need to teach adults to do the same concerning our schools. Our young people are calling out for the skills and room to engage with difficult and needed conversation. They want their schools to be places where they can study complicated histories, have meaningful discussions, and learn how to be involved citizens in a world that grows more diverse by the day. That means our schools must be safe for exploration and engagement, for innovation, and school climate and culture are really established by district, school, and board leadership. It matters what decisions we make, and our children want safety. They want to see leaders address discrimination. They want us to incorporate innovative teaching practices and technology, and they really want adults to stop banning books. As one young person put it, shutting down reading a book shuts down our chance to learn. So I'm grateful for the voices of the Youth Council. I'm grateful because I know that imagining a new way forward is an act of hope, and voicing it is about creating that movement forward. Working to bring about change is messy in the present and also necessary for our collective future. The mess gives me hope too. We need to start preparing kids for their future and stop preparing them for our past. Honestly, I know this is going to sound a little odd, but acknowledging the mess has really proven to be a powerful step in our own decision-making process. So for much of this calendar year, staff at DPI have been working with legislators and key partners on a bill to improve the quality of reading instruction here in Wisconsin. And that work has included acknowledging the mess that we were in an attempt to learn from each other and move forward with a clear understanding of the current situation and a mutual goal of helping kids. And we got there. Was it messy? Yes, it was. Would I have preferred to it have not been? Of course. However, we did get the reading bill that we know will make a difference for kids. 100% yes. And I'm proud of that work and the work that we are now undertaking to get our schools access to important support and quality resources and a few pieces of a much larger, challenging, exciting puzzle. This is an example of how we can work together to advance good policy and good research to help kids and to help the future be brighter for all kids and, in turn, all of us. At this moment in the state of education in Wisconsin, we're standing on a mountaintop, dare I say a precipice, because we are facing challenges. We are facing uncertainty and more than a little mess. But the mess is where the hope lives. Teaching is an act of hope, grounded in a belief in the possibility inherent in teachable moments. Learning is an exercise in humility because it means acknowledging we don't know everything yet, and because it exhibits a willingness to grow. Teaching and learning taken together is an act of trust in the mess, in the belief that in the face of uncertainty, growth is possible and also good for us. There's a lot of fear in uncertainty and mess, yet every day our educators and our learners choose hope. Despite the challenges, the educator shortages, the financial crunches, the crumbling infrastructure, we can choose hope. For even at the bottom of Pandora's box, that's what was left, was hope. And we take that hope with us into the future. Hope is good. It provides a foundation and also the materials to build more. It keeps us going and working toward a better world despite all the mess that tries to derail us. So the question before us all is the question focused on the horizon, on the phase after the soup, on the shape of the caterpillar, and the shape that it'll take after the mess. What lessons can we take into the future? What lessons can we learn together as we prepare our children for a future beyond what we have ever known? Maybe the caterpillar, its hunger, and its mess can help us with an answer. So Eric Carle wrote about uncertainty, about the unknown, and the fear that it'll bring. And he explained, and his books were designed to counteract that fear, to show children that learning is both fascinating and fun. Learning these lessons and collectively moving into a future where we will hand the reins over to our children as they grow into adults, it will not be linear or obvious or easy. It will be messy. We will make mistakes. But remember, our middle schoolers told us it was okay to make mistakes. We will need to learn the lessons that they are learning. We will need to be self-aware as we work hard on our collaboration and interpersonal relations. But we'll get there. We'll get there because we believe in our future. And that means we believe in growing. After all, creating a future based on lessons we learn together, what could be possibly more hopeful or more challenging or more necessary than that? The people doing the teaching and learning in this state are hopeful. They are growing themselves and building a future for all of us. We as elected officials can give them hope by learning from them and doing the same. Maybe one of the middle schoolers had it right when she shared her lesson, the one she knew would be valuable going forward in the future. The most important lesson I learned this year was that you never stop learning lessons. Our kids need to learn the skills today that they will need to teach themselves the new lessons that tomorrow will require, and all in a future that is beyond the wildest imagination of anyone in this room. Yet I'm willing to bet the young people sitting in Wisconsin's classrooms can imagine it, can see it in their mind's eye far better than we can. So good thing they're sharing their valuable lessons with keen insight with us. Let's listen and learn. And if we learn what our students are teaching us, we can return the favor and govern in a way that honors the challenge that lays before us. Because maybe, just maybe, if teaching is about hope and learning is about humility, the future we are collectively building can be a hopeful, humble place. So let's both be the hungry caterpillars and the messy ones, engaged middle school learners instead of jaded adults, young people who build instead of those intent on destruction, students ready to learn together and not warriors intent on tearing each other apart. Because if we do that, if we're willing to take on the messy challenge of doing the real, transformative work, then our kids can really take flight. Our future can soar. Hope can power our schools. Schools can power our communities. And we can all focus on preparing the next generation for their future and not our past. That is how we build a collective future together. Thank you.
Get ready for an improved news experience. The all-new Channel 3000 News app is here. Tailored for your news the way you want it with a customizable homepage. Stay informed effortlessly. Swipe through articles without returning to the home screen. And no more waiting. The new app loads faster than ever, ensuring you get news updates instantly. Download the all-new Channel 3000 News app today. Your gateway to news your way. Powered by News 3 Now.